Emma's life had always been simple, yet she never felt lacking. Coming from a small, humble family, she had learned early on that true wealth lay in the connections she made with others and in facing life with honesty. It was that honesty that captivated Jackson Carlisle. They met at a party hosted by a mutual friend, where, instead of trying to impress, Emma chose to simply be herself, a choice that ironically impressed Jackson more than any of the fake smiles and hungry looks of the social circles he was used to. What began as an unexpected relationship soon grew deeper. Jackson, one of the country's most sought-after bachelors, found peace in Emma's simplicity, a refuge from the calculating and competitive world his family represented. She was a constant reminder of who he could be if he weren't tied to the Carlisle empire. Even the simplest days by her side were all he needed to escape his own reality. With just a few days left before the wedding, Emma couldn't have been happier. She was eager to share her life with the man she loved, and the boxes piled in the corner of her apartment symbolized the start of a new chapter. As she organized the final details for the ceremony, she could already imagine Jackson's smile as he waited for her at the altar, their future finally taking shape. However, in a cold, imposing mansion on the other side of town, the atmosphere was tense. Jackson had been summoned to a dinner with his mother, a woman who had always prided herself on controlling every aspect of his life, from the schools he attended to the people he should avoid. Mrs. Carlisle viewed Jackson's marriage as a threat to the family empire. She had made it clear from the beginning that Emma wasn't worthy of the Carlisles. And that night, her coldness was sharper than ever. "Jackson, you're not thinking clearly," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "This woman only wants one thing, and you know very well what it is. She wants our money, our name, the prestige that comes with it. By marrying her, you're throwing away everything we've worked for." He tried to argue, but each of her words planted seeds of doubt that began to grow in his mind. She knew him well enough to strike where it hurt. "If you insist on this marriage, you'll be out of the will, Jackson. I won't allow everything we've built to be lost." The blow was decisive. Jackson felt the ground fall away from under him. The pride and reputation his family had built had always been like a cloak around him, but now it was suffocating him. Despite the love he felt for Emma, the fear of losing everything he had known, of disappointing his family, gnawed at his defenses. He left that dinner with a divided heart but a decision already made. The next morning, Emma, still filled with expectation and joy, was trying on her wedding dress when Jackson called, his voice cold and distant. "Emma, I need you to come to my office. Now." His rigid tone made her instantly wary. She rushed over, trying to push away the growing unease in her chest. When she entered his office, she found Jackson facing away, looking out the window. The room was heavy with tension, and Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. When he finally turned around, his gaze was distant, his expression empty. "Jackson, what's happening?" she asked, struggling to contain her fear. He hesitated, but he knew he had to be direct. "Emma, we're not getting married. I need to end this." His words cut through her like blades, leaving her speechless, unable to process what was happening. "What do you mean?" Her heart pounded faster, tears welling in her eyes. "The wedding is in a few days. What happened?" "You love me, Jackson. This doesn't make sense." Jackson looked away, taking a deep breath. "Emma, we're from different worlds. I need to think about my family, about what they've built. I can't risk everything." Emma tried to fight, to argue, but he remained impassive. She realized, finally, that he wouldn't change his mind. He had made his choice. She left the office feeling empty, as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The weeks that followed were filled with deep sadness. The public humiliation of being abandoned days before the wedding was devastating, but the real blow came from the coldness with which Jackson had left her. He was no longer the kind, passionate man she once knew. He was a stranger, someone who had chosen money and prestige over her. Days later, Emma's body began showing signs of exhaustion. Constant nausea and queasiness made her suspect something was wrong. Reluctantly, she scheduled a doctor's appointment. The clinic room was silent when the doctor entered with her test results. "Emma, you're pregnant. And, well, it's triplets." Back in her empty apartment, Emma sat on the couch, gazing at the illuminated city skyline. A new life, a new responsibility had emerged amidst her pain. Feeling the weight of all she had faced, Emma realized she was alone, but not by choice. She knew Jackson would never accept this new reality, and in that moment, she made a decision. She would raise her children alone. She didn't want them to experience the same cold detachment Jackson had shown her. She would love and protect them with everything she had, for they were now all that was left of her love. The first months after discovering her pregnancy were a roller coaster of emotions for Emma. When she looked at the ultrasound images of her 3 little ones, she felt a mix of overwhelming joy and anxiety. 3 hearts that depended entirely on her, with a future that no longer included Jackson's support or presence. But she had made her decision. These children would have a safe home, unconditional love, even if it meant facing everything alone. The mornings were a struggle. Nausea debilitated her, and dizziness often prevented her from maintaining a normal routine. She had to reduce her work hours and eventually took on freelance projects, allowing her to work from home and rest as needed. Emma was a graphic designer, and each new project felt like a battle to keep the bills paid and provide a stable life for her children. With each completed task, she felt as though she was building a brick of the new life growing within her. Yet, Jackson's absence was a constant reminder of what she had lost. She recalled moments they shared, the laughter, and the promises made. Now, those moments seemed to fade, replaced by a harsher reality. It was in those moments that Emma would sit in the small room she was preparing for the babies. Every detail was chosen with care: tiny clothes, handmade blankets, and the touch of love she wanted to fill every corner with. She wanted them to know they had a mother who loved them from the first instant and who would do anything for them. The nights were lonely. There were times when her courage faltered, and Jackson's image would return like a haunting ghost. It was hard to understand how he could disappear from her life without a backward glance, without a thought for the future they had planned. Still, she held firm, knowing that if she succumbed to resentment, she would lose herself in bitterness. At the end of each month, as finances grew tighter, Emma felt the weight of her decision. She knew that Jackson, with all his financial resources, would never allow his children to suffer hardships, but she couldn't risk leaving them at the mercy of a father who had chosen money over love. And so, she chose the solitary struggle once again. Emma sought strength wherever she could. She began attending support groups for single mothers, where she heard stories of resilience and overcoming adversity. Each meeting helped her realize that while her situation was difficult, she wasn't alone. Other women faced challenges too, and each of them became a source of inspiration to keep going. In moments of despair, she would look at the ultrasounds and tell herself, "These children are all I have left of what I once felt. They are a reminder of the love I had, but also proof that I can move forward." And that gave her the strength to continue. One night, Emma received an unexpected message from an old school friend, Tom. They hadn't seen each other in years, but he had heard about her situation through a mutual friend and reached out to lend a hand. "If you need anything, Emma, I'll be around. You don't have to face this alone," he said, and Emma felt comforted. Tom began visiting her occasionally, helping with small tasks and offering support whenever she seemed overwhelmed. They shared laughs and stories, and Emma was grateful for his presence. Their friendship became a reminder that, despite everything, there were people willing to help her. Even though she no longer had Jackson, her world wasn't entirely empty. And so, the months passed. Her freelance work started to bear fruit, and through effort and determination, Emma managed to build a small portfolio that attracted regular clients. Every achievement, no matter how small, became a victory, a step forward in the new life she was building. She would stay strong for them. Emma had waited months for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the instant the triplets came into the world. When the first cry echoed in the delivery room, she was overwhelmed with intense love and relief, followed quickly by exhaustion. Holding each of the tiny ones in her arms, she looked at them with tears in her eyes, feeling complete, but also scared. The postpartum period was exhausting. The triplets demanded constant attention, and every simple task multiplied by 3. Emma barely slept, spending most nights awake, caring for each child, feeding and soothing them as the hours slowly passed. The few moments of sleep she managed were always interrupted by cries. Exhausted and alone, Emma felt the weight of the responsibility she had chosen to carry. Amidst this storm, Tom appeared as a safe harbor. Initially, he visited occasionally, but upon seeing her condition, he made a point to come by every day. He brought meals, took care of household chores, and whenever possible, gave Emma moments of rest by holding one of the babies. Instead of succumbing to fatigue, he was calm and patient, with a gentle manner that brought a rare peace to Emma's chaotic routine. "You don't have to do all this, Tom," Emma said one night after he finished washing dishes and joined her in the living room, where the babies finally slept. But he just smiled, shrugging. "Emma, we're friends. I'd do anything to see you well." He said it so naturally that she felt a warmth in her chest. She knew Tom was sincere, but a small part of her feared growing dependent on him. Still, she couldn't deny that his presence was an anchor keeping her sane. As the days passed, Tom became more than just logistical support, he was her confidant. During the sleepless nights, they talked about the past, laughed at old jokes, and shared stories, creating an intimacy that went beyond friendship. Tom shared his own struggles, the uncertainties and choices that had led him to where he was, and Emma listened as if each word were a precious revelation. One night, after calming all 3 babies, Tom brought out a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, offering Emma a small reprieve. "I know one glass won't erase the exhaustion, but at least you can feel human again," he said with a laugh. She laughed with him, and as she held the glass, she felt that, for a moment, life felt lighter. "I can't thank you enough, Tom. Without you, I'd be lost," she admitted, her gaze fixed on his. Tom held her hand a bit longer than necessary and smiled. "Emma, you're already doing so much. I just want to help." And so, through small kindnesses and moments of connection, something deeper began to grow. Emma noticed how gentle Tom was with the babies, as if they were his own. When he held them, she saw the tenderness in his gaze, as though he had known them all along. These small gestures and shared smiles led her to imagine a different future. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, Emma found herself in a state of deep exhaustion. Barely able to keep her eyes open while holding the babies, Tom arrived earlier than usual, his face showing gentle concern. "Go to sleep," he said, taking one of the babies from her arms. "I'll take care of them for a few hours." Emma tried to decline but barely had the strength to resist. She eventually gave in and went to her room, collapsing into bed with the certainty that her children were in good hands. Hours later, she awoke feeling refreshed. As she stepped out of her room, she saw Tom skillfully changing a diaper. "I didn't know you were an expert," she remarked with a laugh. He shrugged. "I learned from the best, he replied, winking. She smiled, feeling her heart beat faster. That friendship had turned into something more, and no matter how hard she tried to deny it, the feelings were becoming increasingly obvious. As the weeks passed, Tom and Emma became an inseparable team. He was there for every milestone with the triplets, their first smiles, their first attempts at babbling, and the small daily challenges. And amidst it all, a deeper connection grew between them, something neither seemed ready to name but was undeniably there. One evening, after a long day with the babies, they sat together on the porch. Tom had brought over a pizza, and they laughed about the little victories and challenges they faced each day. They were exhausted, but the laughter in each other's company made the moment light. "You're really good at this, you know?" Emma said with a smile as she bit into a slice of pizza. "If you'd told me a few months ago that you'd handled 3 babies so well, I'd never have believed it." Tom shrugged, toying with the crust of his pizza. "Maybe I've discovered my hidden talent," he replied, laughing. But there was something more in his gaze, a tenderness that Emma noticed more and more. The soft night breeze made the setting pleasant, and Emma found herself relaxing beside Tom in a way she had never imagined. He was someone who filled silences with presence, someone who made her feel safe. Sitting next to him, her worries seemed to vanish, leaving only a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. At one point, Tom looked at her seriously. "Emma, I've been thinking a lot about us. About this whole situation." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I want you to know that I'm here not just as a friend. I care about you, about the babies, about all of this. And it's more than I ever expected to feel." Emma stayed silent, her heart racing. She knew what he was implying, but doubt held her back. She looked down, a bit embarrassed. "Tom, I feel something for you too. I can't explain it. It's like you showed up to save me in one of the hardest times of my life. And that means so much to me." Tom watched her, respecting her pace. Emma had always been strong, but the wound left by Jackson still hurt, and he understood. He wouldn't push her, but he needed her to know he was there for her, no matter what. A few weeks later, Tom stopped by Emma's on a Sunday. It was a beautiful day, and he suggested they go to a nearby park. She agreed, excited by the idea of taking the babies for an outing. The sun was bright, and the park was full of children running and families gathered. It looked like a scene from a life Emma had always wished for but never imagined she could have. As they strolled through the park with the triplets in their stroller, some people stopped to comment on the babies, leaving Emma and Tom laughing at the curiosity and questions they received. "You have beautiful children," remarked a friendly woman, and they exchanged glances, laughing a bit awkwardly but without correcting her. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to believe they truly were a family, and her heart warmed at the thought. They sat at a table near a lake, and Emma watched Tom playing with the babies. Seeing him there, laughing and entertaining the children, made her realize something she had been trying to deny. He cared for them in a genuine way, motivated by no obligation or interest. He was by their side because he loved them, and that realization brought a smile to Emma's face. "Tom," she called, her voice softer than she intended. He looked at her, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow down. "Yes," he replied, still holding one of the babies and rocking him gently. Emma took a deep breath, her heart racing. "I don't know what the future holds. I still have a lot of fears, a lot to work through. But I wanted you to know that I really care about you. And I don't think I could do this without you." He smiled, an honest smile full of understanding. "I'm here, Emma. No matter what happens." It was then that, for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future with him. A future where she wasn't alone, where the babies would have someone who loved them as much as she did. It was a thought that scared her but also filled her with hope. When the day began to wind down, Tom helped Emma put the babies back in the car and hugged her a bit longer than usual as they said goodbye. They didn't say much, but they both knew something between them had changed that afternoon. Emma's days with Tom and the triplets had become a routine she never imagined she would have, but was now her source of happiness. The constant support, shared smiles, and growing bond between them had finally allowed Emma to see the possibility of a fresh start. But as fate always seemed to intervene, a new, unexpected chapter was about to begin. One sunny morning, Emma received a message from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found it brief but direct. "We need to talk. Jackson." Emma's blood ran cold. It had been years since she had seen or heard from him. It had been years since Jackson had left her without any explanation, without knowing about the children who were now the center of her life. Noticing the change in her expression, Tom looked at her with concern. "Is everything okay, Emma?" She hesitated before answering, gripping her phone tightly. "It's Jackson. He wants to talk." Tom nodded, visibly concerned. "Do you want me to go with you? Or would you rather speak with him alone?" Emma thought for a few moments. As much as she felt fear and anxiety at his return, she knew this was a conversation she needed to face alone. "I think I need to handle this by myself, Tom. Thank you." A few days later, Emma met Jackson at a discreet cafe in the city center. He looked different, wearing a well-tailored suit with the same confident posture he had always displayed. She noticed that he still carried that coldness in his eyes, but something in his expression seemed more vulnerable, perhaps even regretful. "Emma," he began, his voice firm. "I won't lie, it was a shock to find out I have children. I had no idea." She stared at him, trying to contain her emotions. "You had no idea because you chose to disappear, Jackson. You chose to leave without looking back." Jackson looked away for a moment, then faced her again. I know I made a mistake. I was a coward, and I admit it. But now I want to be a part of their lives. I want to be present." Emma felt her heart race, anger and sadness blending with frustration. "After all these years, you think you can just show up and ask to be part of their lives? I've raised these triplets alone, Jackson. I spent sleepless nights, worked hard to give them a good life. You were never part of that, and now you want to interfere?" Jackson sighed, looking slightly shaken. "I know this sounds unfair, Emma. But they're my children too, and I have the right to know them. I can offer them things you can't." The implication in his words infuriated her. "I never asked you for anything, Jackson. And they've never needed anything you could offer, because they've always had enough with me and the people who truly love them." Her response was cold but full of truth. A silence settled, broken only by Jackson, who quickly recomposed himself. "Anyway, Emma, I'll do whatever it takes. Even if that means going to court to gain rights over them." His words were clear, and Emma understood that he was willing to take this fight further. Emma returned home troubled, her mind racing with Jackson's words. What did he want now, after all this time? He had never known the children, never cared for her since abandoning her. Why now? She found Tom waiting for her, and seeing the worry on his face, she opened up about the meeting. He listened patiently, holding her hand, not saying a word until she finished venting. "Emma," he said finally, his tone calm but resolute, "you don't have to face this alone. I know you're strong and have always done everything for the babies, but now you have me. And if you need it, I'll stand by your side in this fight." Feeling her tension ease with Tom's words, Emma smiled slightly, a smile filled with gratitude and affection. He truly was the man who had helped her rebuild, to create a life from what was left. But one thing was clear, if Jackson wanted a battle, he would get one. The courtroom was packed. Lawyers, journalists, family members, and onlookers filled every available seat, eagerly awaiting the unfolding of a case that seemed straight out of a dramatic movie. Emma felt the weight of the stares and whispers around her but kept her head held high. Next to her, Tom sat with a steady, comforting presence. He held her hand under the table, a silent gesture of support. Across the room, Jackson sat with his lawyers, the best money could buy. He appeared calm, but his eyes were fixed on Emma, as if he still believed he could reclaim lost time through a court decision. When the judge entered and began the hearing, Jackson's lawyer was the first to present his case. He described Jackson as a father who had been kept away from his children due to personal and family circumstances but was now committed to making up for lost time. "Mr. Carlisle is here to offer his children a life full of opportunities and financial security," the lawyer declared, gesturing confidently. He acknowledges that he made a mistake in distancing himself in the past, but he now wishes to take responsibility and ensure his children have the best life possible. Emma bit her lip, feeling irritated by the way the situation was being manipulated. She looked at the judge, ready to hear her own lawyer's statement. When he stood up, Emma's defense was direct and emotional, highlighting the sacrifices she had made since the triplets were born. "My client, Emma," began her lawyer, "has single-handedly raised these children since the moment she found out she was pregnant. She has given them not only love and care but also stability, values, and a family structure that never included the absentee father. Jackson Carlisle made his choice years ago, and it's not fair that he now interferes in the life Emma has built with effort and sacrifice." Emma's defense included evidence of Jackson's abandonment, including the years he had been out of contact, and testimonies from close friends, like Tom, who had supported Emma from the start. Called to testify, Tom described the difficulties Emma had faced and how she always prioritized the well-being of her children. As Tom spoke, Emma looked at him with growing admiration. He wasn't just supporting her as a partner but was also a true father to the triplets. He spoke of every achievement, every struggle, every moment when Emma showed unwavering strength to provide her children with a dignified and happy life. Then, it was Emma's turn to take the stand. She took a deep breath and approached the witness stand. Sitting down, she looked at the judge, feeling the weight of every word she was about to say. "Your Honor, I raised these children alone. Every sleepless night, every challenge, it was something I faced alone, without their father's help or presence. They don't know Jackson, they have no bond with him. I've always wanted to give them a safe home, where they would know they were loved and protected." Jackson's lawyer interrupted, trying to dismiss Emma's emotional testimony. "Miss Bennett, we understand it was difficult, but Mr. Carlisle is here now, ready to be a part of their lives. Don't you think your children have the right to know their father?" Emma felt her heart pound and responded firmly. If Jackson wanted to be part of their lives, he would have stayed. "I never kept him away, he chose to leave. He chose not to know his own children. And now, when they finally have stability and love, he wants to come back. This isn't for their good. It's for his ego." A silence fell over the room. The judge took notes carefully as Emma finished her statement. She returned to her seat next to Tom, who gave her an encouraging smile, and the two waited as the hearing reached its climax. Visibly unsettled by the strength of Emma's testimony, Jackson's lawyer called Jackson for a final attempt to appeal. As he stood to speak, Emma felt a mix of anger and sadness. He looked around with a slight, forced smile. "Your Honor, I know I failed Emma and my children. I made a choice that haunts me every day. When I found out I had children, I felt it was my chance to correct my mistakes and offer them what I never had with my own father, presence. I know time doesn't erase what happened, but I'm here now to do what's right." The judge listened attentively, maintaining a neutral expression. Jackson paused, as if weighing his next words. He looked at Emma with a look that bordered on compassion, but she couldn't be swayed. The pain of his abandonment was something no heartfelt speech could erase. After the closing arguments, the judge adjourned the hearing, stating that he needed time to deliberate. The courtroom emptied, and everyone left, waiting for the verdict. That night, Emma returned home with Tom, who hugged her tightly as soon as they walked in. He knew how exhausting it had all been for her. "No matter what happens, Emma, you did what you had to do. You're their mother, and they're lucky to have you." Emma smiled, exhausted but relieved to have Tom's support. She knew that regardless of the outcome, she had built something solid alongside him and the triplets. A few weeks after the hearing, the day of the verdict finally arrived. Emma entered the courtroom with a mix of anxiety and hope. Beside her was Tom, holding her hand, and once again, she felt grateful to have him by her side. The judge, with a solemn expression, took his seat, and the room fell silent. After considering the statements, the evidence, and the case history, began the judge in a firm voice, "I have concluded that the well-being of the children must be the priority above any other interest." Emma held her breath, her heart racing. The court determines that custody of the triplets will remain exclusively with Emma Bennett. Mr. Jackson Carlisle will have the right to supervised visits, should he wish to meet them, and it is deemed in the children's best interest. Jackson, seated across the room, lowered his gaze, accepting the decision with a resigned expression. He knew he had lost more than a simple court case. He had lost Emma's trust and respect and would never have the same presence in their lives that Tom provided for that family. Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her, as if a massive weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She looked at Tom, who offered her a gentle smile and squeezed her hand. Outside the courthouse, Jackson approached her, his expression filled with a silent sadness. "Emma. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I can never make up for what I did." She looked at him for a moment, her expression soft but resolute. "I hope that one day you'll understand what it truly means to be a father. It's not about offering things, Jackson. It's about being present, loving, and caring. And that's what my children will always have." With those words, she turned and moved on, leaving the past behind. In the months that followed, Emma began building an increasingly stable life alongside Tom and the triplets. Each laugh, each first step, each small victory brought more joy and unity to their new family. Tom, with his patience and unconditional love, became the father figure the triplets knew and adored. The following spring, Emma and Tom organized a picnic in the park, surrounded by friends and family. The sun shone brightly, and the triplets played on the grass, laughing and running while Emma and Tom watched with genuine peace. It was a scene of happiness, built with effort, love, and resilience. Tom moved closer to Emma and held her hand, smiling as he looked at her. "You were incredible, you know that," he said with a caring tone. She laughed softly, watching her children with affection. "I couldn't have done this without you, Tom. We're a team, now and always." And at that moment, she knew she had finally found the home and family she had always wanted. A home filled with love, safety, and people who had her back. It was the fresh start she deserved. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out our next story.